I woke up because of the cold. Not the kind that brushes your skin, but the kind that seeps deep into your spine. The cold of the floor. The cold of humiliation. Blood crept into the corner of my lips, salty and metallic. I swallowed it by instinct, the only thing that still made me feel like I existed. The ceiling blurred above me, then slowly came into focus like an old film reel, and that's when I realized I was sprawled out on the floor of the office, the same office where I used to be the CEO, now just a discarded body in the way. Harper walked past me, the thud of her heels sharp and heavy, like I was just a lifeless obstacle. Not a glance, not a question, not a trace of remorse. The door shut behind her, neat and precise, like no one had just bled in this room. My phone buzzed. A message popped up from Logan, my husband. Just 7 words. Stay silent. Don't make this a mess. No concern, no defense, not a single word for the wife who had just been knocked down by her own sister, his mistress. My heart shattered again, but this time, not because of Harper. This time, it was Logan. Because I knew then, in this war, he had chosen a side, and the one he chose wasn't me. A part of me wanted to cry, but no tears came. What surfaced instead was an old memory. Back in school, when I was pushed down in the courtyard, Harper was the first to run to me, wrap her arms around me, wipe the scratch on my arm and whisper, "I'm here. No one gets to hurt you." I had believed I had a sister. I had believed blood could not betray. But I was wrong. And that belief is what made this wound today hurt 100 times more. I turned my face away, took a breath. My lungs clenched like an invisible hand was squeezing them. Every inhale was a stab of pain, but I pushed myself up. Not because I was strong, but because I didn't want to lie there anymore. I didn't want to be the victim in my own story any longer. I sat up, leaned against the wall, my hands trembling as I wiped the blood from my chin. One question echoed in my mind, quiet but sharp as a blade. How blind had I been? Not to see all of this. In that exact moment, something inside me cracked, and something else began to form. Not rage, but resolve. Small, but steady, like the first spark of a wildfire. I used to think I was resilient, the kind of person who didn't need praise, didn't crave the spotlight. I just wanted peace, to do my job well, and have a simple family to love. But that exact mindset is what made me Harper's shadow for all those years. In my mother's eyes, Harper was the sunshine, and I was the one standing on the edge, just there to keep her light from going out. When I got accepted into a prestigious university, my mother simply said, "Don't brag. Your sister didn't get in." No congratulations, not even a proud glance. I still remember when I was 25, 3 years into my first job, I saved every penny to fulfill a small dream, opening a bakery on the corner where I used to live during college. I spent nearly a year planning it, from designing the logo to ordering the oven, even signing a preliminary lease with a sizable deposit. It was the first time I dared to think for myself. But a week before the grand opening, my mom called me home looking worried. "Your sister just quit her job. She's unstable right now. Maybe you could let Harper try running the bakery, just to help her get back on her feet." I was stunned, but I nodded anyway. Because I thought, I'm the younger one. I'm supposed to know how to sacrifice. I stepped back and let Harper take over everything, just changed the nameplate. And a few weeks later, I heard from someone else. She was telling customers it was her idea, that she had built it all from scratch. I just smiled. Not because I wasn't angry, but because I knew. Sometimes people repeat a lie so much they start believing it's true. And me, I just smiled. The kind of smile from someone who's been slowly erasing herself without even noticing. After I married Logan, I thought I was starting a new chapter. But I was wrong. Harper didn't step back. She wove herself into every gathering, every dinner, every financial conversation between me and my husband. At first, I told myself, it's just family. But as time went on, I felt more like someone standing outside the door, watching them discuss things that should have been decisions between just the two of us. I used all my savings to help Logan start his business, from renting the office, paying staff salaries, even co-signing a bank loan because he didn't have enough credit. I thought that was love, trust. But love should never make someone feel like a walking wallet. One time, when I asked about the repayment plan and equity split, Logan just smiled and said, "Harper says you don't need to worry. She'll take care of it." I froze. Not because of what he said, but because of how he said it. Like I was a child meddling in adult matters. That was the moment I realized Harper wasn't just manipulating the business. She was controlling my marriage. And Logan? Let it happen. And I was just a financial tool, the one signing the check so Harper and Logan could build their dream. Then the photo came, like the final stab. A staff member sent it to my email. No explanation, just one subject line. "You need to know." I opened it. Harper, in an off-shoulder top and a skirt too short to be called a skirt, sitting on Logan's lap in the office. They were laughing, like they were on vacation. My heart clenched, but my brain tried to resist. Maybe it was just a moment. Maybe... But then I saw the way they looked at each other. Not accidental, but unmistakably intimate. The way he leaned into Harper told me I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I didn't confront them right away. I saved the photo, didn't send it to anyone, didn't say a word. I just kept it on my phone, like a blade of cold metal pressed right against my heart. That day, I walked into Logan's office, unannounced. The door was unlocked. He was leaning over a budget sheet, one hand holding a coffee cup, the other tapping on the desk like everything in the company was going exactly as he planned. I sat down across from him. My voice was calm, but every word deliberate. "I have a few questions about last quarter's financial report." Logan looked up, paused for a second, then nodded like it was just another routine meeting. I laid out the documents I had printed the night before. Every figure, every vague expense, every strategic consulting budget line without a listed partner. I pointed to a $120,000 transfer to a company less than 6 months old. What's Hart & Company? Who owns it? Harper stayed silent. Logan leaned back, voice flat. It's a trusted partner. There's nothing shady here. I stared at him. What did you just say? He swallowed, then turned to Harper, like he needed her permission before answering. Finally, he said just one thing. Harper thinks you're no longer a fit for your current role. I just want to keep the peace. I looked at him for a long time, the kind of look a wife gives when silently asking, "Are you really on my side?" But I didn't ask. Instead, I took out my phone, pulled up the photo, Harper in that barely there dress, on Logan's lap, her hand resting on his neck, their eyes locked like two people playing a game of chess, and I was the last pawn. I placed the screen face up on the table. And this? What is this? Silence. No breathing sounds, just the soft noise. Harper's nails scratching the table surface. Then suddenly she stood up. She grabbed a thick folder and slammed it into my face, pages flying like a paper storm across the office. "You trying to ruin me? Are you insane?" And before I could react, she hit me again with the folder. I fell, my head hitting the desk corner, the floor freezing cold again. The air smelled like printer ink, paper, and blood. But what hurt more was Logan. He stood there, hands in pockets, silent like a statue. No words, no attempt to help me up. That night, I called Mariah, my best friend from college. I didn't say much, just told her what had happened. There was silence for a few seconds on the other end, then her voice, sharp as a blade. "This isn't a family issue anymore. This is abuse. You need to report it." I gripped the phone tightly, and for the first time in years I felt seen. Not as Harper's shadow, not as Logan's wallet, but as myself, a woman breaking apart, but never broken. I don't cry anymore. I don't ask why, and I no longer need an apology. When the physical pain started to fade, what remained in me was a cold, terrifying clarity. I began piecing things together. The strange transaction records, the emails with Harper in the CC that I was never told about, the meetings I was excluded from with the excuse that I was too emotional. I found out Logan and Harper had been siphoning money through third parties in the company's name. And worse, they were using our joint account to cover their hotel stays and date nights. Everything was done so blatantly it felt insulting, like I'd already been removed from the game board a long time ago. I just hadn't realized I was the pawn they sacrificed. I went to the bank, submitted the documents, explained the risk, and signed the orders to freeze all joint accounts, both personal and business. The bank manager skimmed the file, looked up at me, tilting her head slightly as if to say, "You should have done this sooner." When the system flashed a green check confirming the freeze, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt like a rope had slipped off my wrist, no longer tightening, but still leaving a mark. I stepped out of the bank. It was drizzling. My hair was half wet. But I didn't rush to cover it. For the first time in a long while, I felt my skin touched by something that wasn't control. That night, I stayed at a hotel. A small, quiet place where no one knew my name. I couldn't go home. I needed time to think, to breathe, to stop feeling Harper and Logan's presence haunting every room I used to live in. But they found me faster than I expected. Around 10 p.m., the banging on the door came like a hammer. "Open the door! You're destroying everything!" It was Harper's voice, sharp, hoarse, panicked. Logan didn't speak, but I knew he was standing right behind her, like always. I stood inside, said nothing. My heart pounded, but my hand calmly reached for the phone and called the front desk. I knew if I opened that door, I'd be a puppet in their show again. And I also knew, from now on, I had to prepare for everything, as if I were facing two strangers. Harper's high heels pounded down the hallway, mixed with angry muttering, then slowly faded away. I began gathering evidence. I took photos of the bruises on my cheek, still marked red from the folder she hit me with. I reopened Logan's messages, those cold, detached lines. "You're blowing this out of proportion. You'll regret it." I saved every word, every period. And then the most unexpected thing happened. A front desk staffer, a young girl who often brought late-night coffee, sent me a video that very night. I'm not sure I was supposed to record this, but I think you need to see it. In the video, Harper was sitting on the front desk at the office, her skirt pulled high, Logan standing close, his hand on her waist. They were laughing, whispering, and then suddenly, they kissed. Not the kind of kiss that happens by accident, the kind that's happened many times before. I didn't turn it off. I let it play all the way through. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just recorded each frame like muscle memory. I did all of this, not for revenge. I no longer needed their downfall to prove my worth. I did it to protect myself, so if anyone tried to twist the truth again, I wouldn't be silent. I would have proof. I would have a voice. And this time, I wouldn't let anyone take it from me ever again. I thought I had hit rock bottom, but I hadn't. The real bottom was when my mother called. Her voice was sharp, angry, like I was the ungrateful daughter who dared to betray the family. Harper just lost control because of the pressure. Why are you making such a big deal out of everything? I held the phone, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She didn't ask if I was hurt, or safe, or okay. She only cared about one thing, keeping the family's surface from cracking. Then my aunt, who had always quietly sided with whoever held more power, chimed in on the call. "Are you accusing your sister out of jealousy? Harper has always made your mother proud. Don't let envy make you lose yourself." I ended the call, said nothing. My face was wet. Tears had been falling without me noticing. Every word they said felt like an iron hook, digging into my skin, trying to pull me back into the old role. Silence, sacrifice, bearing the weight. But this time, I wasn't going back. I opened my contacts, scrolled to my mother's name, then my aunt's, and hit block. That feeling. It wasn't liberation. It was pain, like slicing through a rope that had bound me all my life. But after that cut came silence, and in that silence, I started to breathe again. The next morning, I went to Attorney David's office, filed charges against Harper for assault, and submitted divorce papers for Logan. On court day, the air in the courtroom was heavy, the scent of old wood and paperwork thick in the air. I sat upright, hands clasped tightly on my lap, trying to keep the beat of my heart steady. Harper sat at the defendant's table, cream blouse, hair neatly tied, eyes darting around like she was searching for someone to take her side. Logan sat behind her, silent. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at anyone. David stood up. His voice was clear, not cold, but firm. "Your Honor, these are photographs of my client's facial injuries. This is the medical report. And this is video evidence of the assault, which occurred inside the company's office." He pressed the remote. The screen lit up with the footage. Harper lunging at me, the folder in her hand like a weapon, the loud smack, my gasping breaths. The room fell silent. Harper began to cry, but her tears didn't come with remorse. They looked rehearsed, like a scene from a play she'd practiced many times. Logan beside her, lips pressed tight, didn't dare look at me. Moments later, a surprise witness entered. Kyle, a former colleague from the company. He stood and said, "Logan once asked me to be the listed owner of a shell company, Hart and Company, but I later realized the transfers weren't legitimate. I didn't want to be involved, so I stepped back. But I witnessed Harper and Logan discussing plans to siphon money from the company. They thought she'd never catch on." Harper stopped crying. She turned to Logan, whispering something, but he didn't respond. The judge nodded, eyes fixed on Harper. His voice was calm, but firm as steel. "Ms. Harper, your actions are not only violent, but a betrayal of trust, both in your family and in your business." I didn't look up. I just bowed my head. But inside, for the first time, I felt no longer afraid. I was granted everything that was mine. My share of the assets, the equity I had built, the accounts they once tried to erase me from. That afternoon, I passed by a small plant shop. I stopped. On a corner shelf sat a tiny cactus. It wasn't flashy, didn't bloom bright flowers, but every thorn on it looked resilient. I bought it, brought it home, placed it on the desk at my new workspace where I was starting over. Logan texted. One line. "I'm sorry." If only... I didn't finish reading. I opened the drawer, took out our wedding photo. Back then, I thought that picture was a promise. Now I saw a trap. I grabbed a lighter, didn't hesitate. The flame swallowed Logan's smile. I watched the fire shrink down, leaving behind ash and a faint, scorched scent. then turned away. No tears, no bitterness. Just one sentence running through my mind. I'm not their wallet anymore. 1 year later, I live in a small apartment facing east, where the sun arrives early and quietly, as if it knows I need light without the noise. The wide glass doors open to a balcony where I keep a few potted plants, not many, just enough for me to care for something that's growing. In the center sits a cactus, upright, its spine still sharp, but at the top blooms a small reddish-orange flower, which opened on the second Monday of March, exactly 1 year since I walked out of the courthouse with a divorce decree and a sentence for Harper. I hadn't expected it to bloom, but when it did, I sat beside it and stayed silent for a long time. Sometimes, even the strongest things need time to soften. I am no longer Harper's shadow, no longer the peacemaker in the family, no longer Logan's tool. I went back to school for management, spent long evenings buried in books and numbers, and eventually stood up to run a company. Not Logan's, but mine, built from ideas I once kept hidden for fear of being too much. Every morning, I step into the office, sunlight filtering through the glass, shining on the desk where I sign new contracts. I no longer apologize for being capable, no longer lower my head when someone says, "Don't be too ambitious." When a coworker asks me to take on their work, I smile, my voice soft but steady. No, I have my limits. That sentence, so simple, felt as heavy as a door closing on the past. David, my lawyer, is now the man I love. I remember the moment he handed me a cup of coffee before the hearing, the warmth of the cup seeping into my hands, his voice gentle but firm. "You're stronger than you think." That sentence planted a tiny seed, and it grew with every time he sat beside me, listening without judgment, his eyes telling me I was worthy of love that didn't require sacrifice. One night, we sat on a bench out on the balcony, the faint moonlight resting on his face. He held my hand. We talked about old books, quiet cafes with soft music. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. The silence was warm, nothing like the cold silence I once knew with Logan. I used to think love meant sacrifice, bowing down, swallowing pain, always putting someone else first. But now I know real love begins with protecting yourself, because someone who doesn't guard their own heart will always be prey for those who know how to exploit kindness. Outside, the sunlight filtered through the trees, casting soft patches of light across the floor. No shouting, no fists banging on doors, just the faint clink of a spoon against a glass and the scent of damp soil drifting in from the balcony. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't need anyone to confirm that I was living right. I knew, and that was enough.